Welcome to the Manage to Win podcast. Hey, I'm really excited. We got Bill Rice of the Bill Rice Strategy Group on today. He's going to talk about marketing and lead generation, really lead gen. And lead gen is hard. It's hard today. But Bill has a background as a counter-espionage agent for the U.S. Air Force. And then he applies it in marketing. Hey, what's the data? How does this data? Where are the trends? How do we induce people to do this behavior? And he's not manipulative. This seems like a high character guy who's doing some great work. He's very systematic, which I really like. And this is high value. You're going to get a lot out of this podcast. So let's dive right in. Bill, welcome to the show. I am curious about a lot of things that you do with lead gen. But first of all, I noticed in the notes, you have a background in counter-espionage with the U.S. Air Force. I don't know what you want to bring up from that, but I'm curious as a starting point, and you don't have to start here, but that would be my starting point. What life lessons did you learn from that? That's got to be interesting. Of course, part of my thing is just to let you know, my favorite series is A Person of Interest.
Yeah.
So I've watched that whole series now twice.
Yeah.
And so, but this counter-espionage seems like a good guy, bad guy, who's good, who's bad. I don't know, but what life lessons did you learn?
Yeah, it's kind of it's a fun backdrop for sure. And there is a thread that leads all the way to kind of marketing and lead generation. So I'll kind of give you the quickest. I mean, sort of what I learned from it, a couple different interesting lessons that got me there. So I went into the Air Force. I went to the Air Force Academy. All I had on my mind was flying. That was my dream. Went to pilot training at the time, and I'm a little bit older age. We had gone through the first Gulf War. We decided we're never going to fight another war, and they were just slashing pilots. So I ultimately didn't get a weapons system out of that. And so I had to figure out another career field. And in talking to personnel, they had kind of this interesting place, and it was called OSI, which is traditionally kind of like the FBI equivalent in the Air Force. They do major crimes, but they also had this like sort of elite division of counter-espionage operations. I'm like, I want to be there. My major was political science, and I focused on the Middle East and those sorts of things. Anyway, long story short, it was an interesting time for us because in that context, we were running operations and we were doing counterintelligence and counterespionage, looking for spies and those sorts of things. And it was the early days of the internet. And so the most interesting thing that I got to be a part of was helping to develop. And then this transitioned as I kind of went through the revolving door into the federal agencies as I left the Air Force. But in that transition, in both cases, I was building some of the first internet-based operations. And so it got me in the early internet, got me analyzing behaviors and patterns, which ultimately kind of wandered me into marketing. But yeah, as I always say, it's so much more interesting on the outside than the inside. Some of the best spy novels I like, the John le Carre, that are really kind of reflect the accuracy of the spy business, and it's just sort of weighted down with bureaucracy. So I spent a lot of times building operations, writing and trying to get approvals. And so there's a lot more bureaucracy and kind of slow pace to it than some of the Jason Bourne series and those sorts of things.
Another one of my favorites. Yeah. So how did that transition, you indicated that transitioned into, how you do lead gen or what you're doing now, or just how you do business in general. What did you bring over from that?
Yeah, like I said, it was early stages of the internet. We were building my expertise when I got out and was working for some of the federal community and intel community was building information warfare centers. And essentially what we were doing is we were analyzing really large data sets for patterns in a variety of different intel sources. And we were looking for like what kind of patterns indicates something's going on, something's going to happen, something's changed, and those sorts of things. And so we were building databases. We were looking at internet type of traffic. And then from there, as I started to transition to the commercial side of the world, kind of led me into internet security and intrusion detection, which is kind of closely related. And then I discovered this internet digital marketing thing. This was around 2000 or so. And there was no such thing as Google or Facebook. And so internet marketing was very different. And so I kind of transitioned from intrusion detection, internet security into marketing, where we were trying to essentially, to use spy language, induce people to come in and do the things we wanted them to do on our websites. And so that became really fascinating. And that ultimately brought me to marketing and lead gen very early on.
Wow. So are you a data guy? Or are you a tech guy, or a hybrid of both?
Yeah, I'm a nice smash up of technology. I understand the technology and the platforms, came out of a sort of an IT-ish background, but I've also, obviously developed the skills. And this is why I sort of stay in the digital marketing lane for the most part, is because it is kind of a mashup of technology. And then I'm super fascinated with sales. I love the type of lead generation I do is really to support salespeople, give them leads, give them people to talk to. And so, yeah, it's a nice little mashup of all three of those. And again, doing this for 30 plus years or so, you get a little dabble of all of it.
Wow. And I'm curious about a lot of things, but one thing is, with your level of expertise, how granular or what is best practice when you consider an MQL versus an SQL? And by the way, those were new terms to me in the last year. But,
Yeah.
the marketing qualified lead versus sales qualified lead, for the audience that doesn't know that. But I'm wondering if you have kind of a unique perspective or method on that helps you bring much higher value to your clients than maybe someone else.
Yeah. I think that the key differential between those and really being good at it is understanding what marketing can do, particularly as we talk about digital marketing. Like, what can I do? And this goes back to kind of the seeds of my background. What can I see in the data? What can I see, or what characteristics or features can I actually use in targeting, and being realistic about that? So for instance, if I'm generating a lead for fintech or something, there's a lot of data in LinkedIn. I can very quickly find my ICP in LinkedIn through Sales Navigator and dial in pretty tight. I can't necessarily see whether or not they're about ready to purchase, or they have an interest in kind of the specific thing that I'm selling. And that's where, once it kind of crosses the chasm into the CRM, that's where we want to do some campaigns, some sales automation, some initial inquiries and touch points to start to gauge what would maybe make it sales qualified. Like, what's their level of interest? Are they opening my emails? Are they responding to me? Are they giving me some additional indication? Are they redirecting me somewhere else? And so it is a teamed approach to take it from marketing qualified and to sales qualified. I think where we get in trouble, and marketing folks are really guilty of this a lot, is assuming that we have enough characteristics, data, ability to target that we can actually hand a salesperson a sales qualified lead, because we can't. We can really kind of get them in the right neighborhood and then get that information in there, and then help support them with some activities that will give them a better indication of whether or not it's sales qualified.
So can you give me kind of a rundown of how I understand how you identify the people, but then what does a campaign look like where you're really qualifying them step by step?
Yeah. So when we're doing cold outreach, which is really popular in B2B, we are doing a little bit more of a hybrid. And this shows where we're starting to be able to see more things, do better targeting. In the past, you would, get some list, and it would have kind of the demographic, maybe some firmographics in there, give you a nice big long list of emails and phone numbers. And then we go to town emailing and calling and that sort of thing. And from there, we're essentially starting to qualify the lead. What we're doing a lot now, what a campaign looks like now, is being able to go into Sales Navigator to build some queries, to look at the results of that query, much like you would look through your LinkedIn, and see all of those different profiles. And this is where we like to collaborate with sales. A salesperson can look at that list and they can say, that's somebody I want to talk to. That's somebody I want to talk. No, that's not. And we start to kind of refine that list. So then we're building that list in LinkedIn. And then we're engaging first on LinkedIn. We're doing, essentially, for most of our campaigns, we're doing what we call a connection campaign. So, and you probably get a lot of these. Hopefully we do it better than others, but we're trying to connect with those individuals. That gives us an early indicator of intent. And then at the same time, we're reaching out with email, we're supporting with content, and that's going to sort of start to, and this is where it's sort of, and this is just outbound. Inbound's a little bit different, but on the outbound, we start to cloud the line between sales and marketing because we're doing that in collaboration and supporting. And so those are some of the very tactical or detailed ways that we're going about sort of generating that SQL.
I'm curious. It is so tough to reach somebody nowadays. So I just think of myself, and I'm a very small company, okay?
Yep.
But I get regular stuff every day. My junk mail folder, gets anywhere from 10 to 25 at least a day in the email. LinkedIn, I barely pay attention because nobody contacts me unless they want to sell me something.
Sure.
I mean, it's no longer, hey, I want you in my network. It's I want you in my network because I want you to buy something.
Right.
And you really can't call people because people will pick up the phone. I mean, I don't answer the phone if I don't know the number.
Right.
And then you look at social media. So if I do certain things on social media, I can attract an audience. So we grew our audience from like nothing up to as far as impressions.
Yep.
Like on LinkedIn, you brought up LinkedIn. So we were hammering it. We brought it up to like 5,000 impressions from, I don't know, less than 100, whatever it was.
Yep.
But we weren't generating sales.
Right.
So it was great. I got eyeballs, but the eyeballs had no value.
Yep.
And so then you look at PR. Well, what if I get myself in an article somewhere?
Yep.
So how do you break through, Bill? I mean, I'm speaking both as the recipient, somebody's trying to sell me something.
Sure.
And by the way, occasionally I do respond, but I'm more likely to respond. I have responded to a few on LinkedIn. I have responded to a few on email. Doesn't mean I went forward with them.
Yep.
But how do you break through? It seems so tough nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fair point. And there's a couple of very specific ways that we try to create that, right? And this is where, you hear people talking about omni-channel and stuff like that. So again, I like to be very specific when I talk about this. So
what is omni-channel?
So omni-channel is sort of going out with an approach that I'm actually, when I'm going out into the marketplace and I'm doing outreach, I'm trying to hit that person in multiple channels. I'm trying to get visual on me from multiple channels. So hopefully they see me on LinkedIn, maybe they see me on YouTube, they're going to see me in their inbox. So you're using multiple channels together. But to get like more specific and to kind of use your example, if you were to sort of think back to the ones that you responded to, it might be somebody, let's talk about our specific campaign that we might run. So one of the things we love to do is get founders and executives to get involved in the channels. And so, for instance, LinkedIn, I'll talk about this ad nauseum because LinkedIn is a huge opportunity in the sense that there are kind of two things happening right now that are really important and can help you be effective. One, LinkedIn is now and has been for the last few years embracing content. They want content on their platform, and they have reshaped, their platform to specifically favor or at least have a place for video. So the short form video is obviously very powerful. You can see that they're leaning into that. But at the same time, their base of audience has been all people with their resumes. So everybody in that channel has a business purpose. If you look at Twitter, or you look at YouTube, those social media channels, Facebook, they generally came in for entertainment. But now you have this business purpose. Okay, so now how do we break through? If you're willing to bring content to the channel, unquestionably, you'll get visibility around those people in your audience for sure. And then when you come in with some requests, and we also try to make it really obvious, like we're not trying to hide the fact that we're trying to sell something. We're trying to say, hey, we have a solution. We think you fit that profile. And then you'll take a look at it probably. You probably will actually take a look at the message. And then this is probably what maybe converted you on the last ones. If you take a peek at that person, if they are active, or you see some content, or you see some experience that, hey, this person seems to know what they're talking about, and maybe I'm interested in it, those are the ones that break through. And then ultimately, in all of that, you're going to have some scale as well, right? Because it's still a small percentage that are going to actually react. So it'll just give you some flavors for like the types of campaigns and how we try to break through. And that is to create just the classic marketing sort of thing. We're trying to get those 7 impressions so that you'll actually convert, and it's no different there.
Interesting. Yeah. So I'm thinking back. So 2 or 3 of the people that I responded to, I had a need. It matched what they were bringing to me.
Yep.
And I looked at their website. They looked like they were qualified. They were skilled at what they did. And I went through with one of them.
Okay.
And that might have been 3 to 5 of them there. I did have a guy approach me on email, and he had some tips on how to improve something we were doing online. And so he did the Pat Lencioni getting naked approach.
Yep.
And said, here's where you're wrong. And, boom, 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 just, doctored it out.
Yep.
And so, and then somebody came, a week later with the identical approach. So it's kind of interesting, or a week or 2 later. But, I had asked the guy, so what does that cost? And the cost was reasonable for a trial, for a pilot. I was like a pilot.
Yep.
And so we're piloting that, as something now because he qualified himself. But yeah, and how do you think AI is going to play into all the lead gen stuff? I mean, we hear a lot about AI. Part of me hates AI. Part of me sees some value to kind of use it as a sounding board. But, and even now, I'm sure it'll get better. But even now I go, oh, I can look at that photo. That's an AI photo.
Right.
I don't trust that photo.
Sure.
Or you hear an AI voiceover, and where's AI going to play in lead gen, and how is it actually going to help, or is it just going to make a lot more noise?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, there is kind of the old adage that marketers ruin everything. And so we'll probably take a pretty good run at ruining a lot of things before we kind of, get the value out of it. I think a couple things that I am thinking about as it concerns AI. So one, it's here. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. So I think it's really important when something comes on the scene like that, you do take a look at it, you try to understand it. I remember when Google first came out, we were doing Yahoo directories, and one of my younger and more technical people came up to me and was like, hey, look at this site. And it was Google, and it had a little box, and he's like, you just type a word in it and it'll show you all these things. You don't have to go like searching through the directory. I'm like, that looks ridiculous, right? And now that's how we do all of our advertising, right? So I think in the same sense, I think you need to dig in. I think you need to work with it. Where I've seen the most interesting places for AI, and where I think you should be paying attention and even starting to use it, interestingly enough, this concept of predictive analytics or predictive AI and machine learning on a technical sense inside of the CRM. You asked the question about sales qualified. We are working with a company that it's ProPair, but what they've done is they actually put essentially an AI and machine learning engine inside of the CRM. And as leads come in, they have already, again, back to the features and the characteristics you can look at, based on the data elements inside of that lead, they can, with a high degree of success, predict which of those leads is most likely to convert. And so I think that's probably one of those places where AI is already working and people are starting to think about implementing. So lead allocation, lead distribution, getting leads to the right people, making sure your salespeople are working on leads that are truly, have a high potential for conversion. I think AI is already there and is going to take a larger role inside of these systems. And then I think the other place where you should be using it, because you will fall behind or somebody will replace you if you don't, is just integrating AI into your normal workflow, your normal workday. There's no reason for a writer or content creator, even video content creators, to start with a blank page anymore, right? So you can go into AI, you can ask it to work alongside of you, to brainstorm. For sales, one of my favorite approaches, and we've done some really sophisticated things here, is having it analyze. Anymore, most of our sales calls are video calls, right? And we've got a transcript, to analyze our transcripts and to assist me, much like a sales coach, to point out places that I could have refined, done better, you'll be amazed at like stuff that AI will pull out that you didn't actually pick up on the signals. And so I think as a sales coach, AI can be really nice. And then the other thing that we're using a lot is to give AI the ICP role and have salespeople or even marketing people as they're doing campaigns sort of have a nice deep conversation with that ICP and try to pull out some additional pain points and angles that you can use in your marketing campaign. So there's a lot of neat things to be trying, but I think at the bottom line, you need to be working with it and understanding it.
Yeah, and by the way, in the audience, if you're not familiar with the term ICP, it's Ideal Client Profile. So with this AI that's both, first of all, what CRM would you recommend?
Yeah, we're actually at the bottom line, I usually recommend the CRM that you're most comfortable in. And all of these, CRMs, and I think there's a stat, I think it's still current, that there are more CRM solutions than any other SaaS category. So I always recommend to people, one, it's a CRM that you're comfortable in and you're willing to kind of work inside of that, because most of these CRMs will become feature parallel because they're all watching each other and that sort of thing. Most people, Salesforce is still a category leader for sure. For B2B, like my personal favorite, and actually the one I use inside of my agency is Close CRM or close.com, okay. I think. Yeah. I love that. I love sort of the philosophy they have behind it and using and moving people through statuses and being able to trigger sequences and those sorts of things. But there's a bunch of good ones. I've used Pipedrive before. HubSpot, I think, is becoming more and more capable. They're probably the number 2 behind Salesforce that I see. And HubSpot has kind of a neat DNA because it's kind of marketing first and content, which we love, and that's where we work. And then it has the CRM component of it too. So yeah, most of them you can kind of get.
Does Close have the marketing side?
So it does not have the marketing components. Okay. So generally what we're doing with Close is it gives you a lot of flexibility to do whatever marketing, landing pages and stuff, and then use the API to post inbound in there. And then it can help you on the outbound. And again, this goes to kind of the fact that they will all get to similar places. I have seen some early, because I've been a long time user, some early queries about, would it be helpful if we had more AI? Would it be helpful if you could manage social outreach integrations with LinkedIn and stuff like that? So again, if you use it and you get good at it and you're comfortable in it and you're efficient in it, most of those features that you kind of see on the other side of the fence will come to you eventually anyway. So
I'm very curious about the AI that you mentioned that could do, I'm going to reword it, role playing with you about the ICP. And I'm really big on role playing. I don't think with salespeople do enough role playing. What AI is doing that? Because that doesn't sound like something I'm going to do with ChatGPT.
Actually, that is where I do that. So ChatGPT, I'll actually tell ChatGPT, hey, I want you to be a chief marketing officer or marketing director for a fintech SaaS company with 20 plus years. And then I'll set it up and that's who you are. And then I'll start asking the questions like, hey, what are your biggest headaches? What are your biggest pain points? And the neat thing about AI too, in using it in your own workflow is, again, I've been doing this 20, 30 years. I have like a playbook. I have my bread and butter, the things that I know are going to work. And if you come to me as a consultant, there's probably a 99% chance I'm going to recommend a very similar solution because I know it's going to work and I know how to do it. But it's helpful for me to occasionally go into ChatGPT and say, hey, what are all the possibilities? And have me sort of rethink things I've forgotten or things that I haven't done in a while. And so the same sort of thing when you give it a role, as you're talking to that, you might like, I know what a chief marketing officer needs. I know what their pain points are. I know what makes them mad every day. I know what inspires them every day. If you ask ChatGPT, I guarantee you they'll probably give you 30% more that you hadn't even thought of. And so I like that for the role play. Somewhat related, we're building our sales coaches with Notebook LLM, which is a Google product, because a lot of our transcripts for our clients are coming out of Google Meet. And so they drop them into Google Drive, and you could take this Notebook LLM, which has Gemini behind it, and you can tell it, hey, look at all of my transcripts. And some of my favorite queries are, show me or review and analyze all these transcripts. Tell me what my playbook is. And it will essentially, from its viewpoint, say, this is your playbook. And then say, in what areas am I weak? Or what areas did I miss? Or what opportunities did I miss? And each of those queries will pull out some really interesting stuff. And you can essentially rebuild a better playbook by using something like that.
And can you ask why? Can you tell me why I missed that?
Yeah. Well, the nice thing with ChatGPT and most of these, and I think this is intentional, they seem to be getting better at when they do give you a recommendation, they support it, right? They'll either source like some material that they used on the web and show you where that information came from, and sometimes you need to prompt it and encourage it to tell you why. I've even had it build tables for me. It's like, okay, you made these recommendations, create a table listing the recommendation and why you made the recommendation. And it's really good at that. And it'll pull in some stuff.
Okay. And then can I say, well, actually, you're not correct on that for this reason. And then it'll learn. Have you done?
Yeah, you can debate it. It's really interesting to debate. Some of them
debated with a machine.
Totally. But again, that's probably going to kind of push you a little bit. And of course, it's going to push it. The other thing that's interesting that I'm starting to see with ChatGPT, I think Claude AI has this as well, is they have the ability to sort of break out a collaboration area where you can go in there and edit or ask it to refine at the very specific, whereas ChatGPT, if you've used it before, it'll spit out a long response. And then you could say, hey, maybe change this and, make it more professional or make it more conversational or that kind of thing. What you can do with these new sort of pop-out screens is you can go in there and say, hey, I don't think this sentence is right, or this recommendation in my experience doesn't work because of this. And it will rethink that particular area. So I like some of those features.
So Bill, I've been in business over 50 years. If I start when I was 15 years old, 16 years old with a pickup truck, I am curious, you're an agency and you're obviously very good and you have kind of unique spin on what you do, it sounds like.
Yep.
And then I've done a lot of bootstrapping, and I'll be candid with the audience and bootstrapping has its place, but I've come to the conclusion after all my experience, 100% bootstrapping's not usually a good way to go. Very rarely does it achieve the best result.
Yeah.
So would you please talk to our audience? I'd like to kind of have some back and forth on it.
Mm-hmm.
What are the pros and cons of I'm just dumping it all on the agency, or I'm just keeping this all in-house, even if my people have to learn how to do it? Or what I've learned is kind of a nicer approach for me is a hybrid model. Yeah, but I'm curious about your opinion.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of sort of a phased approach, and having, started and founded both venture-backed and bootstrapped. The agencies have all been bootstraps. Agencies kind of inherently are fairly easy to bootstrap and those sorts of things. I think it's always important to phase, because early on, as an early founder, or, maybe you've got some seed round or something like that, you're not going to have the resources to do all of what I'm talking about, right? But there are a lot of resources, and even talking to and interviewing agencies, particularly in the area of marketing and sales, you can learn a lot by having some conversations. And most of them are willing to give you some of that starter advice. I mean, if you're not in my sort of price point, I can't necessarily be effective for you because of the type of techniques that I need to use, but I've seen enough that I can kind of get you started and say, hey, get into LinkedIn Sales Navigator, get really good at refining the people that you think need to see your product, and reach out and have some conversations and be transparent and be authentic and have some of those conversations and start to understand what that process is ultimately going to look like and get yourself a little bit of traction, a few clients, right? That'll get you some traction, get you some understanding of what kind of works best. And then at that point, maybe you're going to bring on some capital, maybe you're going to do some angel to give you a little more, or maybe you're just going to get enough traction where you kind of go to that next phase and say, okay, for me to continue to grow, I need to take my focus somewhere else. I understand enough about my sales and marketing that I can pull somebody in, and I may not know everything. I may not be able to do it as well as they are, but I have done it enough to understand exactly what I need to know and to be able to, because you need to be able to know enough to evaluate. I always say, like, our number one competitor is, particularly in the agency business, is one, the charlatan, and two, and this is, we all kind of start here, is potentially that individual who's just kind of starting and doesn't have enough experience that you're going to probably burn a little of your capital on their learning. And so I think it's really good to have bootstrapped a little bit and have enough knowledge that you can really kind of do a really good job of sorting and filtering your alternatives, and then being able to scale with the cash that you're bringing in.
Define the charlatan for the audience.
Oh, I'm sorry. So charlatan is basically somebody that tells you something that's too good to be true, right? And so they're a little bit of a scam. And I think the original word came from kind of the snake oil salesman that would go from town to town selling, medicinals, but it didn't really work. It was just, some sort of placebo or whatever. There's a lot of that. So if it feels too good to be true, or quite honestly, if it's too cheap to be true, then you're probably in for a surprise as far as outcomes.
Yeah, but then you talk about the person who's going to go and prove it for a little while. And do you have like a guide for anyone, like a bootstrapper's guide or something, or is it just kind of a plan? You're very much a process, plan guide that you've mentioned, which I really like.
Yeah,
because my weakness, as a leader, was not being systematic.
Yeah.
So when you tell me I've got a process, I've got a system, I know immediately I light up.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, okay, well, I like this.
Yeah.
Because
my favorite first deliverable is a 90-day plan, right? So if I'm having a discussion or we're doing a discovery call, I want to have a sense of a 90-day plan. And we do offer this for free. I probably should kind of make it easier to get to, but the 90-day plan, especially for B2B marketing, for most sort of SaaS and fintech that we do, and those who are selling, products and service to businesses, to enterprises, there is kind of a defined 90-day plan. And there's two things I like about that. One, in the span of a quick 30-minute discovery, because again, we have, and any agency that you should, kind of work with probably has enough understanding of your business that they can kind of say, hey, in the first 30 days, we're going to have to set up a few things. We're going to have to do a few things. We're going to leverage maybe this thing that you're already doing. And in that first 30 days, we're going to do that. And then in the kind of the next 30 days, the 60-day realm, we're going to start testing and getting some data back to refine, hey, are we doing the right things? And then at day, sort of the 90-day and the 120-day, that's when we're going to start to scale things and potentially consider maybe some other things that we're going to do. And that 90-day plan serves two really good purposes. One, it's a well-defined roadmap. You know where you're going. The client knows where they're going. The agency or the partner that you're working with knows what they need to do. And there's a set of expectations. And then the other thing that oftentimes people don't think about is they're like, man, 90 days is a really short sort of runway. I think if the two parties who are coming together to partner to do marketing or sales, and obviously they want, the product of that, if we have a 90-day plan, it actually gives us a little more runway because we've set realistic expectations. If you go in without a 90-day plan, I guarantee you that person who's paying you money is getting like wiggly in their seat in the first 30 days. Like, is this going to work? Are we going to get cold feet? But if you have that full 90 days, they're going to be more comfortable. They're going to be more settled, and they'll get less antsy less quickly.
Well, we like to use a pro sports metaphor when we teach our Manage to Win system, which involves your passion and your purpose and some Jim Collins things, and then the 4 management disciplines of how you hire, manage, develop, and retain people. And then on our Hire the Best system, our hiring system. And one of the things that we use is we call it a scrimmage. Some people call it a test drive, pilot. Yeah, but one of the things I learned in leadership is that I used to say, okay, we're going this way. And then, a week into it or 2 weeks or a month later, it's like, oops, a little bit wrong direction, or that's going to fail. And
right.
So I always encourage my coaching clients, always introduce things as a pilot.
Yeah.
And we say that when you're hiring, one of the two requirements, I have two requirements you can't break. There's other things I recommend strongly, but number one is you have to do a background check. And it needs to include a civil court check. In some states, you cannot make a hiring decision if they're suing their neighbor or their past employer or whoever, or vice versa. But you still want to know.
Right.
Okay. So you got to do a background check. And it only costs like $100, $125, whatever, cheap insurance. The second thing is you have to do a scrimmage. You can call it test drive pilot. But you have the person in for 2 days, 2 hours to a day, or maybe 90 days. Okay. 90 days is the maximum. But you pay them as a contractor.
Yeah.
And you say, come on. And so I have WCA Technologies in New York City. They're a great company. Been around 35 plus years. And they adopted this where somebody goes through the whole interview workout process of their hiring tryout. We call it like pro sports tryouts.
Yeah.
Workouts.
Totally.
And then they hire them as a contractor. They come in for a day. They work on real tickets as a tech. They work with other people. They teach them things, see how quickly they can apply it. They give them something that's impossible, see how they respond to that.
Yeah.
And after a day, you got, okay, well, they're still probably on their best behavior.
Yeah.
But you have a much better feel for how things are going to go.
Yeah.
And it's been near flawless. So,
yeah, that's genius.
Yeah.
Actually, we have not the first part. Maybe we should think about that. But the second one, we've actually done the 90 day to hire. And we've been doing that for years. And that is, you're absolutely right. That is an incredible, and for both parties, by the way.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, the employee that's coming in, like, it's not a fit for them either, or the expectations we have might be more than they're willing to kind of live up to. But yeah, I'm a huge, it doesn't always work. It's not always, perfect. Not everybody can kind of do that 90 day to hire, but yeah, it has been a game changer for sure. We don't hire anybody without that. We should call it a scrimmage for sure.
Yeah. But it's like a prolonged scrimmage. Another client I have, Anton Systems in Florida, they just do accounting systems based on Acumatica for real estate developers and property management companies. That's it.
Yep.
And we just did that with one of their people. They did a 90-day contract to hire, and it was a win-win for both. I totally agree. So that was a rabbit trail to get back to what you said. I love the fact you've got a plan. And you really know, 90 days into it, if you're working well together, you've got momentum.
Yep.
And then you can really take off. But if at any time in that 90 days, something goes sideways for one or the other party, then you've got an easy out.
Yeah.
And that's so important. When I teach my hiring system, I say, what's the number one objective when you're hiring? What do you think the answer is, Bill?
Yeah, I would say, I have two immediately come to mind. I'm usually either trying to fill a gap, bring in a skill that I don't have, or offload something that I need to kind of move away from so I can do something different or bigger, or something else needs my focus. So those are usually the two reasons I do. It's probably not the right answer.
No, well, I don't want to say that there's a right answer.
Sure.
But I would say my answer is your number one objective is to save time. So you need to have a hiring tryout process where you're qualifying, you're assessing the person carefully. And if at any time it's not a match for one of you, you save time and you end it.
Yeah.
So you save time. And that's the purpose. If the person gets far enough along the process where then you put them in a scrimmage environment, then you're really maximizing it. But going back to your plan, really like the plan. I like the way you talk about, let's dive a little bit deeper for those people, because most of the people in the IT space, your IT managed service providers I work with,
sure,
they struggle with lead gen.
Yeah.
They really do. So what are some things that they could, before they might hop on a call with you,
right,
a discovery call, what are some things that they could think about now that are like a mini SWOT Okay. Have I defined my ideal client profile, my ICP? Have I defined really the attributes of an MQL, a marketing qualified lead, of a sales qualified lead, an SQL? I mean, I don't know what they are. This is your thing. But if they were to have a checklist, what are some of the things on that checklist? Or maybe that's part of your bootstrapper's guide. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great question. And we do actually, if you were to schedule, time with me, I'm gonna send you a few questions and some homework. So a couple of things that I like someone to have done before we talk is, one, do a bit of an audit of your raw materials, because that's going to be important to us. Depending on what you have inside of your organization, we're going to build on that. So the most important is, again, we focus a lot on your ideal client profile and your positioning in that market. So I like for people to, and this is usually the first red flag, because a lot of them don't have this, is to go into your CRM and take a look at what you have been closing. And again, you can remember what I said all the way back in my heyday in the military. I love patterns, right? By doing just a rudimentary, audit overview of that, you're probably going to start to see some patterns. And so we would like to look at those patterns with you to see if they're patterns, that there are features, whether it be in Google Ads that we might run, or LinkedIn where we might try to do some campaigns, or social. Are there patterns and features or characteristics that we can observe out there? So that's one. That's going to give us a lot of information about who we're trying to get you to come to you as an inbound lead, or to be effective as an outbound lead. The other thing is, what are you doing today? Sort of digging in, you're probably experienced with this on the sales side, is, have you talked to your salespeople? Do you actually know how they're getting enough to be fed? Like, oftentimes your salespeople have their own little sort of mini marketing, and these are the best salespeople, have their own little marketing tactics that they're using to either supplement what you're doing as an organization, or to keep themselves fed, or it's just kind of their secret sauce. I like to talk to them and figure out, like, your best salesperson, or even your middle tier salesperson, like, what are they doing that's outside of the organizational support? Because usually there's some little nuggets in there that we can scale up for the whole organization. So there's just a couple of little things I could see you run into that for sure.
Well, I'm laughing because when I've gone and worked with other organizations, and I say this humbly, I've just been blessed by God that I am typically the top one or two salesperson. They're small organizations. So I'm not talking about I'm competing against 500 salespeople, and I've had fun competing. Yeah. And I mean, the last one I did was many years ago, but we had an outbound telemarketing group, and we were selling employee performance management software. The software did not exist because we had just been purchased and it was being rewritten for the first 6 months of the year.
Yep.
But I had this young gal, I forget her name. They were all young women who were very dynamic, group of 3 to 5 of them. And she would call these corporations. So you have a need for employee performance management software, get a couple qualifying leads, and I had an MQL. Yep. And I closed 78% of my pipeline of that MQL of $1.6 million of a product that didn't exist. And the other salespeople sold nothing in 12 months.
Yeah.
There were 3 other ones. So, and then I went into the new year with $13.2 million in my pipeline with a $2 million quota. I was looking pretty good, So, of course, they were greedy and let me go because they didn't want me to make any money. So,
right. No, for sure.
Which was sad. But the thing I'm laughing about is I always had my own thing I was doing.
Yeah.
I was always doing that. And the good salespeople are always doing something different.
Yeah. Well,
and the disconnect between marketing and sales is what I see 100% of the time. And you're breaking through that. And I love it.
Yeah, I think, I would have 2 things to kind of add to that. Is oftentimes marketing comes in, and I learned to get humble really early in my career, is marketing come in and they think they know what you need, right? And so I always like to talk to sales first, because we can shove a bunch of stuff into you, but if it's not what you need, you're not going to convert it, then I look bad and all those sorts of things. So I think that's really important to have a dialogue with sales to really kind of understand that. And then another thing that we've done, this is more when we spent more time in CRMs and lead management, to your point, and this is what taught me to look for and interview salespeople to figure out like what they're doing to support themselves, is whenever we used to do this exercise where we would take, when we're generating large numbers of leads, we always want to know where those leads are going, who converts them the best. And so we would do this really simple sort of data analysis to rack and stack the salespeople, and we would do 2 looks at it. One is all of the salespeople, best to worst, right? We'd do that stack. And then we'd put beside them the number of leads they took from the organization. And invariably, every single time we did it, the best salespeople took the least leads from the organization, and the worst people took the most. And so it kind of just reflects that the best salespeople do have a system that they're essentially kind of doing some of their own marketing. And if marketing isn't so arrogant as to ignore that, oftentimes they can scale that to the rest of the organization if they can build some trust with those top salespeople and understand what they're doing and just try to re-engineer it at scale.
Yeah. So, Bill, I'm going to recommend that we do an abrupt stop here because the people that are interested are going to want to talk to you. And the people that just don't get it, aren't going to get it. And I have some questions. After we close, I'll ask you a couple of questions, but I encourage the audience, there's some really great stuff here. Now that you said you have this bootstrapper's guide, is that right?
Yeah, I do have a 90-day go-to-market framework that I can provide out to folks. And like I said, I should make it easier to get to. Right now, I don't have it published online, but it is something that I hand out every time I'm talking to someone.
Okay, so you and I will work that out. And in the details of this podcast that we post, there'll be a way to get a hold of you or get that guide or do both. And so definitely want people to do that. If they want to learn more about you, Bill, what website do they go to? What do they do to learn more? And if they're like, no, I don't need to learn more. I just need to get my 30-minute discovery call. Yeah. And I would encourage them not to be that impulsive, but to look at your website and then schedule that. But it sounds like you're doing some great stuff and people need to learn more.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the quickest way to a consultation with me is billricestrategy.com. Just go to that website and you'll see that consultation. Nice thing about that is initial discovery, but we give a lot of value in that first conversation. I'm going to do some analysis and we're going to kind of flush out a little bit of that 90-day plan. The other 2 places, very active on LinkedIn. You can just search for Bill Rice. I was early in, so I'm LinkedIn, just Bill Rice is me. And then the other place where I'm actually putting more and more content out is on YouTube. I also have Bill Rice Strategy on YouTube, got a whole channel. And that's kind of a fun piece there. I'm talking a lot about a B2B marketing strategy, but then we also do some of the kind of the fun stuff around just kind of like the background of my entrepreneurial journey. So that's kind of a fun mix of the business and some of the personal background stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Bill, so much for being on the show. This has been great for our audience.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.